Since the start of the COVID outbreak, we've seen many liberals rush to gun stores to pick up guns, many of them for the first time. According to the Washington Free Beacon, there's been about 6 million gun sales in 3 months, with 40% being first-time buyers. Some gun store owners are getting kind of frustrated over this. In fact, Steven Crowder, along with Sig Sauer, worked together to get me a Sig M400, which apparently is way over the top for me, who just wants to protect my house in the event of mass unrest like we've been seeing. Just want to keep myself and my friends and my family safe. The strange thing about all this is that many of these people who are now picking up weapons are liberals. Now, look, there's a big difference between whatever it is I am and someone like Tom Arnold, who's got raging Trump derangement syndrome. But Tom Arnold apparently has not only just called for the Second Amendment for everyone, but it seems like he's actually calling for armed insurrection against the federal government. Let me just tell you, TDS is terminal, okay? Look, it's one thing if a sane, rational person says that they want to discuss restrictions to make sure mentally ill people don't get weapons. Now, for the longest time, I agreed with that. And now I've backed off for a lot of reasons. I don't think that we can put, the argument that was put to me was we can't put restrictions on the Second Amendment, lest the government put restrictions on every other amendment. And then we have to recognize if you want these changes, you have to actually change the Constitution. So that was me backing off. Then I came to a point where I saw all the chaos unfolding around me and said, I better get armed myself. In which case, many of these laws and these discussions were misplaced. And they were rooted in a false sense of security, the idea that we were all going to be safe and okay. So I ultimately conceded that and said, yeah, man, we can't do it. Look, there's maybe a conversation, but for the most part, with everything happening so fast, with Tom Arnold being nuts, you got to protect yourself. Now, here's the point I'm trying to make. There's a big difference between me saying, I just want to keep my house safe. I had someone trying to break in several months ago, last year or whatever. So it makes sense to be like, what am I going to do to make sure I can stay safe? Because the police are overwhelmed. Cops are resigning. The activists want the police to go away. Okay, fine. If you want to defund the police, I got to protect myself, right? Now, the difference here is that Tom Arnold apparently is calling for insurrection. Let me show you what he said. Tom Arnold, I don't even know why this guy, whatever, says Second Amendment is for everyone, including black men with long guns. But it's effing time for us white liberal men to stand up for our brothers and sisters, borrow our dad's hunting rifles, and go nose to nose with Trump's gang of misfit tools. Let's do it, Rob Reiner. What? Rob Reiner and Tom Arnold borrowing their dad's rifles, which apparently is not even legal in wherever it is Tom Arnold lives. So where's he? I don't know. He's in California or something. I don't know a lot about how the gun laws are, but I was told that you legally can't just take your dad's gun and then go march around with it. Let alone could anyone go nose to nose with federal police. Now, look, he's referencing this tweet right here. They say completely unmarked officers in riot gear holding protesters blocks away from the White House. No badges, no insignias, no name tags, nothing. Refuse to tell us who they're with. Nah, man, I'm not okay with that. Government's got to have accountability. If you want to stand and carry a shield and a badge, I get to know who you are. Why? Well, the taxpayers are funding this. You're supposed to be of the people, for the people. We have constitutional rights. I do not like what we're seeing here. And some people have said, yeah, well, Antifa's doxing people and blah, blah, blah. I don't care, man. I get it. I don't like the doxing. I don't like them coming after the officers, but we cannot have a civil society with unnamed, non-badged individuals wearing armor. How are you supposed to know whether they're cops or not? It's bad enough we have no-knock raids where cops come in with plain clothes and people lose their lives. Here, look, man, and I'll tell you this too. There are a lot of stories like Breonna Taylor and Duncan Lemp, I believe the name was. There's a bunch of stories of cops just barging in and shooting people. Not good. Can't have it. That should be one of the worst crimes for the government to commit. So I don't like this. I don't. But the idea that Tom Arnold is going to solve this by getting his dad's weapon and marching up to these guys is just a recipe for absurdity and disaster. Not that I think he'd ever actually do it. The other weird thing about it is, dude, just buy your own gun. Like, what do you mean borrow your dad's gun? What are you talking about? Are you arguing that your dads are 2A aficionados, that they're Trump supporters or something, and they're armed, but you're not? Wait, and how old is your dad, Tom Arnold? Aren't you like 60? These people are insane, all right? Let me tell you what happens. Let me ask you a question. These people who are first for the longest time saying, no guns, ban all guns. I've never been all about that, okay? I was of the position of reasonable restriction, right? The idea being, hey, if we've got mentally ill people, what can we implement? What I wasn't, and then someone presented the constitutional argument for me, so I backed off. Now the issue is, for me, the unintended consequences of a lot of these laws. When COVID happened and they stopped processing background checks and stuff, apparently people weren't able to buy weapons. And when they closed all these businesses, all of a sudden people couldn't buy it either. And that was kind of like a good wake-up call to realize we may have good intentions on certain restrictions. The problem is the unintended consequences could restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens. And therein lies the big problem. And I'll tell you this, I'll fully admit it was a bit selfish. Urban city folk like me thinking everything was safe because the cops are always nearby. But I've always been aware of that point, right? I lived in rural Miami. I've talked to people about like what happens if someone breaks into your property, because it happened to me, and the cops aren't there. So that's when I started to kind of move off of the traditional liberal, hey man, everybody should be able to have, guns under the Second Amendment, but restrictions. Now I'm totally off, like, nah. I still think we want to make sure people who are unwell can't get weapons. I talked to an instructor in New Jersey who basically said we need probably uniformity nationwide, but smarter controls like, laying off of a lot of the needless overbearing restrictions and coming up with a very simple process that makes it faster and easier. I'm not going to pretend to know what that is. I really, really don't. I've never been big on paying attention to what happens with guns and gun culture and stuff. And hey, to my own detriment, right? Now that all hell's breaking loose and we saw a week of rioting and people are going nuts and people like Tom Arnold are going nuts. Well, now everyone on the left, liberals, seem to realize the importance of being able to go and get a weapon. But here's the point I'm trying to bring up. What do you think these people do who complain about the police and say, defund the police? They're screaming, defund the police, abolish the police. What do you think they do at the first sign of trouble? They yell, call the police. I'm not kidding. I got a story for you, man. First, let me tell you this story. Some rioters, and these were really the lowest tier of rioters, were walking down the street. They're coming from a protest and they threw trash at someone's car. It wasn't like a brick through a window, but they threw trash at someone's car. The guy stops and turns around, and all of a sudden, these like 19-year-old Black Lives Matter lefties are like, call the cops, man, call the police. It's like, bro, you were just at a rally yelling, defund the police. You're going to call them now? That's the epitome of privilege. You don't realize how good you have it. The guy pulls around in his car and jumps out with some kind of wrist-mounted quadro sword. It's like he's got 4 blades on his wrist. I don't even know what this guy is, what he's wielding. I don't know what you would call that, some kind of fist weapon with blades on it. And he starts charging at these young people. And they're yelling, call the cops. Bro, do you realize what it would be like if there were no police? Now I get it. We talked about it. There's a potential for, reform. Most people in this country support reforms. Absolutely. However, 90% don't actually want to see the police numbers reduced. So reforms simply mean like procedural reforms, maybe bail reforms, things like that. Not that we saw success with that in New York City, but the point is people want to try and do better. I bring you now to the utopian vision of people like Tom Arnold. Black protester dies after being hit by a car during a George Floyd demonstration in California, sparking outrage that cops do not arrest the white driver seen on video preparing to smoke as the victim lay bleeding. They say Robert Forbes passed away in a hospital Saturday, 3 days after he was hit by a car in Bakersfield. A white driver ran into Forbes after 10 p.m. on Wednesday while he was participating in a George Floyd march. Officers did not arrest the driver at the scene and are still investigating. Video evidence reportedly shows the driver was not traveling above the speed limit at the time of the collision, and he was not under the influence. The story, as I understand it, and it's tragic, man. I'm sad for this guy. He's lost his life. I like protesters. Like, I like people who exercise their First Amendment, be it the anti-lockdown protesters or Black Lives Matter protesters, 100%. That's the Constitution, baby. First Amendment. If you want to come out and protest peacefully, I'm all for it. If you want to engage in civil disobedience, which includes obstructing roadways, I am all for it. You will be arrested. That's the line where we say like, hey, you can't do this. And if you do, you'll be arrested. It's nonviolent. It jams some people up. And it really is that point of pressure that can help make positive change without causing permanent damage. In this regard, we can see the unintended consequences. It seems, according to multiple stories I've read, the guy was driving like normal. This guy was in the road, didn't see him, I guess, and hit him, and this guy died. It's sad. The protesters immediately demand the police arrest the guy. Well, there it is. Let's take a look at what happened in Omaha. A bar owner comes out to see someone shove his dad. So then he says, like, hey, who shoved my dad? And they start threatening him. He shows that he's armed. So two guys lunge at him, and then he apparently fires a warning shot. Now, my understanding as well is you never fire warning shots because you're responsible. If you aim your gun up and point it in the sky or whatever, that bullet's coming down somewhere. So he fires a warning shot. Two guys run off, but then someone jumps on him. He apparently gets knocked. I guess he gets knocked on his stomach, and he aims over his head and fires, and he hits the dude who was on top of him in the neck, killing him. What do the protesters then demand? They demand the police get involved and arrest him. So I'll tell you what, man. When we see these people come out now, totally you know what, man? There's no principle. There's no guiding for. I have no idea what they want, man. Because you know what happens after they go and burn everything down? Minneapolis Mayor to seek federal aid after looters cause at least $55 million in damage. You know what, dude? If you still live in Minneapolis or New York City or any of these cities, man, I got no empathy for you. Oh, no, hold on. Let me take that back. If you're in the process of trying to stage an exodus from these cities, I feel for you. If you are choosing to stay in these places, I will not have empathy for you. There's a big protest where they asked the mayor of Minneapolis whether or not he will defund the police. But then they went on to say, we don't want no more cops coming in our neighborhoods armed with guns, yada, yada. He said, I do not support the total, complete abolition of the police. And they all start booing him. All right, man. You don't want cops. But when someone harms you, you want cops. Do you know what life would be like if you did not have them? Someone would get hit by a car and they'd be like, who are you going to call? Later. That's it. We can talk about reforming the police. Totally makes sense. But getting rid of them, that makes no sense. And now because of all of this destruction, they want the federal government to pay for it. You know what that means? They want us to pay for it. Listen, man, Minneapolis, Democrat city. We could say it over and over again. But you've got now these liberals who have seemingly abandoned everything they've been fighting for over the past, 10, 20 years. Now they're saying abolish the police. You know, some of them are actually calling for private police. I kid you not. I'm seeing people on Twitter say that we should be able to be responsible for our own defense and hire our own community groups. And I'm like, bro, you're taking the libertarian argument of private police forces. I don't like that idea. How would that work? I mean, it actually might make sense. You could theoretically have private police departments. One of the ideas I heard was about voucher police forces. So the way it would work is you've got multiple departments in your area. Everyone pays taxes. Taxes are progressive. So rich people pay a little bit more percentage wise, and then poor people pay a little bit less or none, but everyone gets an equal voucher. You then give that voucher to the department you like the best. And if they mistreat you, then you next month or whatever, you give your voucher to a different department. That voucher is basically a check from the government. It's cash. I don't know if that idea would work. And one of the challenges is that competing departments, we can't have one department be like, that's my customer. I'm going to give you a free pass because you pay my bills. I don't know how that would work. It really does seem like we do need a uniform, a separate neutral arbiter, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. So I'm totally for reforms. But could you imagine what would happen if they abolished the police outright? Because that's what they're calling for. They're not saying straight up, reform. Some activists are. No, the louder activists are saying abolish them. So here we can see liberals defending the Second Amendment and wanting to get rid of the cops. How long until they get rid of whatever how long until they oppose the progressive tax because they don't like the idea that it's unfair. A disproportionate amount of their taxes goes towards, say, the military, which oppresses marginalized communities. I'd love to see it, man. Them kind of like waking up. The problem is, I don't think what we're seeing with people like Tom Arnold is principle. I think we're seeing absurdist reactionary politics where they just want to oppose. It's contrarian politics, really. Everything Trump does is wrong, and that's all they will ever be. I feel like it's got to be on purpose. You know what I mean? The way I was saying it before is like, Think about it this way. A broken clock is right twice a day, huh? But how do you be wrong every single time? Like, that's got to be a conscious decision, I guess. What I don't like is what happens when they say, okay, we're going to abolish the police, because they are. The city council in Minneapolis is proposing this. And now they want us, the federal government, to pay for it. You know, man, I see a lot of people saying no. Absolutely not. I see a lot of people defending the riots, and it's just so annoying. I see my own family members supporting the looting and the rioting, and it's like, you hypocrites, man. They don't understand what it's like to grow up in the hood. They don't understand what it's actually like. I've got family that grew up in the suburbs, you know, suburban white folk family members who have no idea what life is really like in the hood, in the ghetto. They don't understand what racism is really like in the city, in Chicago. Everybody's racist. You got white racists, you got Asian racists, you got black racists, you got Mexican racists. Everybody seems to hate each other. It sucks. Now, we had a cool thing going on in my neighborhood for the most part, but yeah, a lot of racism. These people have no idea what they're talking about when they say defund the police. I've had a lot of problems with cops in my life. I've had cops kick the door into my apartment, storm in, guns drawn, and yelling at us about somebody who didn't even live there anymore. How is that legal? I filed a complaint. Nothing happens. Yeah, it sucks. I've had cops give me false tickets. I've had cops try to plant drugs in my car. Yeah, it's nightmarish. And I've also had cops respond when when I've had, say, thefts, when someone stole something very important to me. I called the police. They came, filed a report. This is the best they could have done. But hey, I'm glad they were able to do it. They were on the lookout to try and recover these things for me. And I've had undercover or plainclothes cops actually stop a mugging in progress. Some guys trying to mug me. So I'm not going to pretend like the world is all Skittles and candy canes. I'm going to straight up say I'm glad that there are cops there when I need them. And I'm going to straight up say reforms probably make sense. Now I'm of the position where I once thought we'd be safe in our big cities because you do have police. Now you can't rely on them. It's the funniest thing to me that many people on the left are just overtly pro 2A now. But the weirdest thing is how it's like not even uniform among the left. There's a post going around. It's really funny. And it's a skinny white guy with like an AR-15 or something. Actually, I think it's like an M16. And he pulls his underwear open, looks down sad, and then puts the gun in his pants. And I'm like, no one I know who buys weapons looks that way. And the funny thing is, if I was going to ask you to describe somebody who owns a gun, what would you imagine? Like if you actually paid attention. If I asked you to describe someone who didn't, like an Antifa versus, a right-wing gun instructor, it's like, first, listen, man, there's a group called Legally Armed in Detroit, all right? And the photo of them, they're all reasonably fit-looking adult black men. Like the one dude's crouching down, he looks like he hits the gym, all right? I don't think that's a dude who feels inadequate. I think he's a dude who feels strong and he likes having power and he works out, he earns it. And you look at Antifa and what are they? Gaunt, frail, with deep bags under their eyes and frail little disheveled arms. They can't even do a push-up. I know I'm exaggerating a bit, but come on, seriously. You ever see the video of the Proud Boy fighting the Antifa guy where he winds up and then boom, hits the guy right in the face? When you look at the Proud Boys, they're not scrawny. They got too much testosterone. That's why it's funny about what these people think. It's like they're making fun of gun people, but they're trapped in their own bubble and they have no idea what conservatives or moderates or regular Americans actually think. And I'll tell you this, man. I posted this clip about the social justice people all chanting mindlessly. And there's this dude I know, and he was like, I'm not going to watch that because I know the truth. And I'm like, you're in a cult, bro. Just watch the video. No, I don't need to because I know the truth. I'm like, dude, that's exactly what occultists would say. Just watch the video. Nah, they don't want to do it. These people are in a cult, man. Now, some of this, it's a mix of weird ideological cultism and I guess just contrarian politics. So I'll tell you what, please, Tom Arnold, Rob Reiner, don't go get your dad's hunting rifles and go stand nose to nose against federal law enforcement of some capacity. I don't understand how these are the people who are complaining about. You have these conservatives and 2A people who are saying the Second Amendment is to protect against tyranny. And now you have literally Tom Arnold advocating for being that guy. It's like, bro, Tom, listen, you're an old white dude who wants to go get a gun and challenge the federal government. Do you understand what that sounds like? You're weird. Please stop. Anyway, man, it's Sunday. Things have chilled out quite a bit. Apparently, the protests in D.C. were like a tenth of the size of what was expected. They were saying there's going to be 1 million people, and then like 10,000 showed up. So, I mean, good on people to go protest, but not really that big. I'll leave it there, man. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at 4 p.m. at timcast.net. Check it out. It's my main channel, and I will see you all then.